Hi everybody, welcome to yet another video. So today we're having a look at the Sagola 3300 GTO, and this is the tech cap, normally sold as a GTO car, and it's in 1.3. Now those that watch the channel and observe will notice that the surroundings are somewhat quite different. We have family in Spain, so we go there reasonably often, and I can pick Sagola stuff up reasonably cheaply in Spain. So I'm doing something actually it's around a friend's place, but I'm doing something for a friend. We've got no facilities to do it inside, so we're having to do it outside in his garden on one of the warmest days of the year. It's in the morning. Temperature when we started was about 33 degrees Celsius, which is about 92 Fahrenheit. And what I was worried about was whether we'd be able to get the material on wet enough, really, because we started off in the shade. You'll see there's some trees giving us some shade, but later on it comes into full sun, which is fine because that was the clear coat stage. But I just wanted to get my best chance of getting it right, really. The other thing you'll obviously notice is if you're outside, you're going to be subject to the elements, and I don't mean rain, because obviously if it's going to rain you just don't do it, but I mean things like insects and flies and things like that. Now we were fortunate with this because it came out perfect. You could not wish for anything better. And the reason I dug this video out, I actually did this about 1.25 years ago. It was in June. It was during a heat wave. It was getting to 40 degrees later on in the day, Celsius, which is what, 110 or whatever it is. But yeah, it was getting quite warm even when we started this, and I thought it'd be a good little experiment for you guys to see, doing something a bit different, where normally I'm struggling with the cold, and as I say, I've just got this video out because we're having by British standards, a bit of a heat wave at the moment. It's actually 33 degrees Celsius outside, which is, what's that, 94, 95 while I'm recording this video. So, and it's not far off in here as well, because we don't do air conditioning most of the time in the UK, because we don't need it. But it's nice not to struggle with the cold. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was saying that I prefer to like have the extreme of too warm, because it just seems so much easier to paint when it's warm. Anyway, what we're doing here, it's a metallic black. Now this bike, which is actually how I know the guy, you'll hear me chatting sometimes, and that's the other chap, is how I know him. These bikes, I've got a bike the same as this, and these tanks are absolutely huge. They take around about 450 millilitres of base coat or clear coat, and that's just for the outside of the tank. If you're doing the underneath as well, you can add on about another 300 to 350 millilitres. So if you equate that to like a front bumper and a couple of wings, you're looking at somewhere around that territory. Maybe not quite 2 wings, but certainly a front bumper and a wing. Certainly, 2 doors and a wing. So quite a lot of paint and quite a lot of material, because they are really big. They hold about 6.5, 7 imperial gallons. So yeah, they're big tanks. So my worry really was trying to keep everything wet, particularly the base coat, because it is although it's a black, it is a metallic black, and I wanted to get it as even as possible. And if you get it on a bit too dry, you can end up with like little stripes where the edges of the pattern have gone dry too quickly, and the metallic stands up more there than in the wetter centre. Do a drop coat over it, and it tends to mist it all over. With something like this, it doesn't matter, because the rest of the bike is actually silver. so it's only the tank that sticks out as being black. But yeah, it all seemed to actually go really well. What I was thinking at the time was I was thinking I would prefer, and the GTO 3300 is actually a really good gun. When I first got it, I was a little bit apprehensive about it because it just didn't quite seem to perform, and the more I've used it, the more and more I like it. I paid for this about 160 euros, but that was about 3 or 4 years ago. They've gone up quite considerably since then, so they're not as good value for money as they used to be. But as I say, when I first got it, I was a little bit it didn't blow me away basically, but now I get hold of one and I really enjoy using them. And I've got the primer version. I'll try and remember to put a link in the description of the primer version, which is a fantastic gun. Really good, and that was relatively cheap as well. But it depends where you are. If you're in the US, they seem to be quite expensive. Australia, I think they seem to be a reasonably bit cheaper. Over here in the UK, they're quite expensive now. Some parts of Europe, obviously Spain, they're not so expensive. So it depends where you are as to how good value these are, really. But it was less about the gun really and more about the circumstances. If you haven't got everything exactly as it should be, do give it a go, because you can, when you see the end results of this, and if you're bored with me rabbiting on, then if you wind it towards the end, you'll see the end results. It's worth having a go at these things, because you can actually get some really good results without everything being exactly as it is. Even if you're doing it inside, you can get insects come along. As I say, with this, it didn't come along at all, which was perfect. But you do run the risk of something like that happening, especially as the weather gets warmer, or maybe it was too warm for them actually to come out anyway. When we applied the base coat, you'll see, or should see soon, me using a digital gauge to get an idea of the temperature. I think the temperature shows at about 35 or 36 Celsius, which is quite warm, well, very warm for applying base coat. And I was thinking, I wish I had a 1.4, because I got it in a 1.3. I have since got it in a 1.4 because I bought a black racing version. It was just like a special edition black racing version, but I bought that in 1.4 because I thought that'd be handy. I can interchange the two, so that I've got 1.3 and 1.4, and that does wet it up a bit more than the 1.3, but at the time we only had the 1.3, so you would see I'm taking it relatively slow. The clear coat I'd never used before. It was something called dermatology with a rapid, they call it rapid rapido, I think it is, rapid hardener. So none of the conditions were ideal. What I did was I mixed up the first layer of clear and used it, cleaned the gun out and mixed up a second layer literally 3 or 4 minutes afterwards. So it just allowed it to tack off enough, which didn't take long in that heat. But what I didn't want to do, I didn't want it going off in the pot, because I've had that before in Spain where it's actually gone off in the pot, because at the time I was using extra rapid, but it can go off in the pot, which is not good news. It comes out like candy floss. So I was trying to avoid that, and the best way to do that is to just do 2 separate mixes. Yes, it's more faffing about, but it's certainly less faffing about than having to do it again. But you can see I went quite slow and I laid it on quite heavy. I was after the best finish. I wasn't trying to replicate anything. Having said that, if you see this is actually a Honda. On some of these Hondas I've seen, where the part comes down to meet the seat, where the seat would normally butt up against the tank, some of the finishes have been horrendous, which is unusual for Honda. Normally their finishes are quite good, but the actual, you know, it's all covered, but the orange peel is quite bad. So I'm not trying to replicate a factory finish, because in the case of this I really wouldn't want a factory finish. I'm just trying to get it as best I can, but as I say, because of the temperature, you just have to take it nice and slow, lay it on. Sorry, I've just had a cold. Lay it on, plenty of material on, because you know that it's going to go off really quick. It's not going to run. The solvent should come out of the clear coat quickly, because the actual heat is in the item that you're spraying. So you shouldn't get solvent pop unless you go too mad. It's always a balance of how much do you put on, but you want the flattish finish. As I say, I hadn't used this clear coat before, so I was literally I was just feeling it as I went, really, and everything turned out fine. The tank is still in use now, a year and a quarter later. No problems whatsoever, although it does have a tank cover on it quite a bit, to be fair, but yeah, there's been no problems with it at all, and it's actually come out really, really well. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed doing it in the sunshine, and I thought it would just be something a bit different to show you guys. As I say, I put a camera on my head anyway, and I thought one day I'll probably narrate this and put it up, and because it was so warm today, I thought, well, that's what I'll do. And you see that part there is in the sun all the time, so it's 40 odd degrees, but the other part's been rotating, which is I call it nature's bake. And as I say, the reason I said that is because I did something else the other day, and because it's so warm here, I literally left it for like 5 minutes to flow out, and took it outside and put it in the sun, because it's a good way of you know, speeding up the drying process, although you do have to be careful of insects, etc. But it doesn't seem to be as prevalent as it used to be, although we're getting less insects, I suppose, in the world. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed something a little bit different. As I say, it's still, you know, me spraying something, me spraying a bike tank, which is what I often do, but the circumstances were a bit different, and hopefully you think the results are worth it. It's got like a metallic fleck. As far as I remember, we've got a bit coming up where it's later in the evening. It doesn't get dark till 10. Later in the evening coming up, and you get an idea of the depth of gloss with it. But it came out this is it where it's later on in the evening, about 9 o'clock at night. But you get an idea of the depth of gloss. It's really, really come out nice. And not a nib or anything in sight. This was all done with a 50-litre compressor, and as I said, it uses a reasonable amount of paint, so it just goes to prove that you don't need a big setup to do reasonable things. You know, you're not going to do a whole car with a 150-litre compressor, although it's a twin piston direct drive one, so it's a noisy old beast, but it seems to do the job, and it was relatively cheap, and that's all I've got to use, really, when it comes to spraying over there. Anyway, guys, as I say, I hope you enjoyed the video, and you keep watching them, and I'll keep making them. And if you are enjoying the videos, maybe think about giving us a subscription. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.